Hi everyone, Brandy here. As part of our accessibility series, I'm going to be covering contrast today, which is Web Content Accessibility Guideline 1.4.3 and 1.4.6. Contrast issues are pretty easy to resolve, especially with all the tools out there. Um, but the biggest issue that I see is text over background images. They're almost never compliant and almost never tested. So I'm going to show you today how to test and how to resolve some of these issues. There are a lot of tools that will check compliancy contrast ratio, but this is my favorite here. It's by webaim.org. If you just search contrast checker, it'll show up. Another option is the Wave plugin for Chrome. I think there's one for Firefox as well. And then another option is Google Chrome Inspector Tools. It's not perfect, but you can see here that there's a single check marks indicating you met AA and AAA. You can actually just pick the little box to get the new hex color that you need. I don't use this very often because it's not perfect. Sometimes it doesn't know what the background color is, so it doesn't give you a ratio, or it doesn't work with RGB values, so I generally don't use that. I'll just stick with WebAIM for now. The goal here is to be AA compliant always. Very rarely are you going to be able to accomplish AAA, so nobody's really held to that standard yet. And if they are AAA compliant, it's probably just a black and white website with nothing else going on. So it's safe to ignore that. Normal text is no lower than 12 pixels, of course, to about 19 pixels if it's bold. Otherwise, it's 24 pixels. And then large text, of course, is 24 pixels and above. So in this case, if your font color was 787878 on a white background and the font size was 25 pixels, you'd be totally fine. Otherwise, it would fail contrast. Okay, there are a couple ways we can test this here. First is Chrome's Lighthouse. Just all you need to do is check the accessibility box and then test. And let's see what it comes up with. See if there's any contrast issues. I don't see any immediately, but I know there's one on this page. It's this newer button, which is on the bottom. Scroll into view. Okay. Alright, so let's take a look at this. According to Chrome, it is compliant, but it's failing contrast. That means there's probably an opacity set on it. And there it is, opacity up. Alright. Set that opacity to 1. So it actually passes contrast. You just gotta kill the opacity. I don't like to deal with opacities when it comes to text and buttons and things. Just use color. Alright, and then the other method is the Wave, of course, Wave plugin. It didn't detect any contrast issues. That's funny. Oh, because we fixed it. If I refresh, run it again. No, it still did not detect contrast issues. That's interesting. See, kind of proof that these tools are not perfect and really you need to use your judgment and test manually. But let me go ahead and turn off these alerts here. The Wave tool also has this contrast tab here and you can manually check for things. So, why isn't it working? It's supposed to be able to click and let me refresh. contrast. There we go. Come in, pick a color. Green text, white background, passes AA. Good to go. Alright, now for the hard stuff. The stuff that nobody seems to ever test or fix, and it drives me crazy, and that's text over pictures. So let's go ahead, set the text to white to match this font color you see here. And to check a background image, you need to find the lightest point of the picture, which I think is right there. So eyedropper there. And of course, it fails. So let's start fixing that. There are a couple methods. I'm going to start with an outline. According to the W3, an outline, a 1 pixel outline with enough contrast between the background and, the outline color and the text is good enough. But in my opinion, it looks horrible. So let me show you what that looks like here. Gross, right? Maybe if the font was thicker, it'd be fine, but that's unacceptable to me, so I've never done it, even on a thick font. But you can also accomplish it with a text shadow. So I have a 0x offset, 0y, and a little bit of a spread. 7 pixels, maybe 5 would look better. Nope. 10. 10's okay. And that's good. And apparently it's compliant, but I can't read that. So I'm going to show you something else we try. Now is about when I would start adding an overlay between the background image and the text to darken the photo without having to actually edit the photo. So I'm going to add a pseudo element, position and absolute right over the hero here. Give it a background color with 70% transparency. No, let's not do that. Let's start with 30% transparency, and then we'll test it again. So we'll have white font, and I'll test that lightest point again, which is the headlight, and it still fails. As expected. I have learned that 60% transparency is about as light as I can go. So I'll go to 60. Recheck it. Oops. Headlight. Look at that, it passes. And you can actually read the text. Some clients don't like this because they want their images to actually show more. So I'll swap the solid background to a gradient. And what I'll do is I'll take the content, set a max width of 500 pixels, and then make sure the gradient extends to like 600 pixels or so. So background linear gradient to right, start at a black at the 0 position, and then transparent 60% to 600 pixels, and then add transparent to the gradient. So let me add something here so you can see where it ends. You can see it'll be 60%, which we know is the good visible amount of gradient, all the way to the end of the text. And then it'll show a little bit more of their picture and the colors will come through, but you can still read, still be compliant, so good. Sometimes though, that's not enough either. So we've done things where we take the content, put it in its own box with a solid background color, and let me show you. CHU admissions. Right here, we've done a lot of this. our designer will actually come through and edit the photos. So approximately 50% of the photo is just a solid background, something readable, and then the image is still visible on the right. And then no matter how you resize, as long as that background image is aligned left or right, depending on the image, you should still be readable. Ignore this link here. It's what happens when anybody can edit WordPress sites, but you get the gist. And of course, we have another option of something like this. There's a little bit of text, and you place it somewhere on the image, middle, top corner, whatever, it doesn't matter. Most of the image is seen, it's featured, and you still get the important info associated to that image. And, it's perfectly readable. And that's it. That's how you deal with contrast issues. I hope that was helpful. So, until next time.